probably better. Is this? Yes, that's working good. So the ingredients you need in order, we said last week, for tshuva to be successful is one, if it's an assay, just tshuva is enough. If it's a lois assay, so you did something you shouldn't, so the assay was you didn't put on tefillin. You regret it, just like likely. You ate pork, but you ate pork. You regret it, then the tshuva is now a component. It's not sufficient in its own right. You need something else, and that's Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur is a bit like, you put the shirt in for the wash to remove the stain for the second time. There's an extra oomph that gets it. So the extra oomph that you need, that is Yom Kippur. What he says, if you did something which is going to involve Mrs. Beisting or a Chiv Koresh, then what you need is the tshuva, then we needed the Yom Kippur, and you need suffering that happens to you during your lifetime, which you, welcome's the wrong word, but maybe welcome's the right word, but you accept as part of your tshuva process, then that will complete the process. But famously, and this is where we touched on last week, and I want to expand on this a little bit this week, but he says, but if the thing that you did, which carries the death penalty, Mina Shemaim, or for a base team down here, also involves a Chillul HaShem, then you need tshuva, and you need Yom Kippur, and you need suffering that happens to your lifetime, and then you need death. So death is the completion of the process.
So a fellow is Mechal Shem Shemayim on Sukkot, does tshuva, suffers, and dies before the next Yom Kippur, he doesn't have kapara?
That would be a simon that he wasn't forgiven. Yeah, that would be a simon. That would be a simon. Now, I mean, there's also some formulas for this. Don't worry. But first of all, we're about to argue with this in a second, so don't start getting yourself all upset.
Is it like a progressive thing, or is it a cumulative? Like,
well, both cumulative and progressive.
What I mean is, like, Yom Kippur is an easy way out. You just have to wait for the calendar to take Yom Kippur. Boom.
Well, no, it doesn't mean. I don't think it means you sit at home. No, what does tshuva? Yeah, what does? Yeah, I think what Yom Kippur means not just the day passing, but you actually embracing the day. Rabbi Dessa brings the famous. Sorry.
The day itself is mechapper.
Yeah, the day itself is mechapper, but I don't think so. Let me tell you the story. Rabbi Dessa says in Miktam Aliyah, he tells the story from the Baal Shem Tov, the famous Bas Kol Shel Acher. So Acher, so Elisha ben Avua, he was riding on a horse, on Yom Kippur, which happened to fall on Shabbos. So just to rub it in, and he was passing the place of the Kodesh Kadosh. So he hears a Bas Kol calling out, saying, "Shuvah, Shuvah," as you say, repent, return, my sons, return, my sons. Everybody's welcome except Elisha ben Avua. To which the Baal Shem Tov said, "What does this mean? There's tshuva for everything. What do you mean Hashem says except Elisha ben Avua?" So he says there's two types of Bas Kol. There's one sort of Bas Kol that comes from there, and one sort of Bas Kol that comes from down there. The Sultan, and he says, Rabbi Nessa, as it were, makes it into a psychological thing. And he says, really, that deep down in him, he generated the own Bas Kol. There wasn't a Bas Kol from Shemayim, but it's a Bas Kol from his Yetzer Hara inside himself that said, you don't have to do this. So that means that was Yom Kippur. So it was Yom Kippur. Why didn't Yom Kippur work? You have to embrace it. I don't think just sitting at home reading the newspaper in Yom Kippur, you go, oh, well, that's fantastic. I said sorry at the time. And you've got to, as it were, get into the day, accept the day, make the day part of you, I think, to work. I don't think it just means Yom Kippur, a 24-hour rotation of the calendar, I suspect.
The person is Mevat Manaseh, doesn't wear tefillin.
Right.
So it's Kislev. So the next morning, he does a complete tshuva, I'm really sorry about this.
Right.
It's done.
Right.
He doesn't have to wait for Yom Kippur.
Correct.
If he does a los, say eats pork,
yeah.
then in addition to the sincere tshuva he did that the next day, he still has to wait for Yom Kippur. But he already did the full tshuva.
I agree, but we just said that that's not enough. You need Yom Kippur as well. But I'm saying, I suspect, I don't know, I'd have to think about this, but I'm almost certain that what it means is that Yom Kippur which you embrace, not Yom Kippur that just happens to be a 24 and a bit hours a day.
So he sleeps to Yom Kippur, it's not going to work.
That's right, so he but do that, if he sleeps through Yom Kippur, then he's missing a component, you have to wait for the next Yom Kippur.
That shows that he doesn't have contrition.
Exactly. Okay. So therefore...
I mean, if he doesn't make it, though. If he doesn't make it,
well, if he was an honest, that's a different story. But if he chooses to sleep through the day, that'd be bad. No, but listen to this, because let's go on to this. So, as I said, Ramoshe Sternbuch of the Edichore's Beistin, he famously says, or his brother was a Magachir in Gateshead Seminary for many years, a huge Talmud Chacham. His sister, Aliyah Shalom, she used to come to my shiur. He used to give a lady shiur once a month in Manchester. She used to come. I'll start a lady shiur in the Kehillah, you know. Anyway, so this is what Moshe Sternbuch says. So he says this in his opening here. This Harambam kan noel oid mehadelis al Bali Tshuva. He's slamming the door in Bali Tshuva. Right. In other words, the only way you're going to complete this process is, I mean, this would not go down well at an Arachim seminar, an Isha Torah thing. This is not going to work. Thing, you know, all you've got to do is look forward to a nice bit of death. And everything you've done wrong in the past is gone. So listen what he says. He says, Beniro Shebechil HaShem, it seems to me that when it comes to Chillul HaShem, Tikkun Pshuta B'Kiddush HaShem, it strikes me as obvious that the Chillul HaShem is repaired completely by going the opposite direction of the Kiddush HaShem and making a Kiddush HaShem. And B'Kol Avera Nischal HaShem Shemayim, V'Imavei Acherim B'Tshuva. And if a person comes and does tshuva haloi nitakim b'zeh al yodin is kaddish Hashem, that if you do a proper tshuva and make it into a kiddush Hashem, then that should be enough. The ein loy tikkun kamayu, and there he says in actual fact, not only is it enough, there is no greater tshuva or tikkun available to a person than you reverse the process and you make a huge kiddush Hashem. But and even we're talking about, as the Rambam says, the sort of Chillul HaShem that only will be cured by Mamisa. That's if the Chillul HaShem just stands, you've not done anything about it. It strikes me that there is no such thing, says Moshe Sternbuch, no greater cleansing, that's a terrible word, but no greater repair to the damage you've done, then you go to the opposite extreme, which makes a certain logical sense. But the money on Rambam B'Parik Beis Halachadal maybe to Kunim Harbi Labal Tshuva, and he says, I'm astonished that the Rambam in the fourth period brings many advice and approaches Bal Tshuva can. And remember, we're talking here about Tshuva is not the guy who went to Sameach or Isha Torah and stuff like that. I'm talking about a Frum Jew who's done sort of terrible things, the classic Bal Tshuva. He says, I'm astonished the Rambam doesn't cite this as an example. Rabbeinu Yonah and Shari Tshuva and Shara Aleph Be'ikar Esrim, he says, he says, as I've said, that's one of the chiyuvim of tshuva. A chiyuv of tshuva, an obligation of tshuva. If you want to show Hashem you're really right about it, did you put it right? Did you go to the opposite direction? Your life, therefore, should be dedicated to, as it were, undoing the damage you've done and creating the exact opposite impact in the world, positively, to the one that you did negatively. And how great it is, those who bring other people to do tshuva. You want to make Kiddush Hashem? Make other people do tshuva. That would be wonderful. But it's better going Kiddush Hashem Shemaim because that makes the Kiddush Hashem Shemaim. And that would do it. Now he doesn't think. I don't think he brings this here. But the Gemara above Messiah says, and don't ask him here because in my, we'll see why in a second. I'll tell you why. In my struggling to get the shir ready tonight, which was very frustrating. I didn't get a chance to remind myself where it is, but it's the Gemara above Messiah which says that it is impossible if you are responsible for somebody becoming frum. And I think you can actually say that. I don't like the phrase, it drives me nuts when people say, I made him frum. But certainly by Avram Avinu it says, HaNefesh Asher Osa B'Charon, he actually made souls. So let's be a little bit more modest. Let's say you had a big hand in somebody becoming frum. That they would say the reason I became frum was because of you. And incidentally, I think I may have told you this story, I can't resist telling you it, but I've got this theory. This is the Rubinstein theory. I've not seen this anywhere. I mean, maybe you can deduce this from sources. But I'm absolutely sure that one day if I'm standing in front of the Beis Din Shalmana and they would say your name and I'd say Yehuda Rubinstein, they get down my file and look at it. And instead of going through it all, if they would say to me, as I sometimes say my Talmidim to my Talmidim and Talmidas, what do you think? Do you think you should get in? So if they were to say that to me, I would say, of course. And they say, okay, fair enough. You're allowed to blow your own trumpet. Why do you think you should get in? I said, well, I did this and I did that and I set this up and blah, 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 blah. My theory is, my belief is, they're going to say, no. That's not really very impressive. We're not impressed with that. But you remember that time that little 2-year-old fell down and you scooped the kid up, it was crying, and before the mother came, you comforted the kid. Remember that? Remember that time you helped that old lady across the road? I mean, or you did something else, you stopped somebody being embarrassed in public. You remember the things that you don't know about. Why? Because as Rabbi Dessel says, so I've got a bit of a makar for this, the more open the mitzvah is, then the more chance it is of being corrupted by your Yetzer Hara, by your gaiva, etc. But if you do, the best is when you did it spontaneously. You didn't think about it. I've got this feeling that what I'm going to say upstairs is the reason to get in. They're going to say absolutely no. And then what? And they're going to say this, that. I forgot all about that. Totally forgot all about that. So I'll tell you a story. My oldest, I don't know if I told you this story before. My oldest son, his wife, so that's my oldest daughter-in-law. She's a very bright girl, to put it mildly, and she's the deputy head of the infertility clinic at Shari Tzedek. So she makes babies all day long, which is a huge mess. I mean, if you've known anybody who's struggled with infertility issues, it's a huge thing. Anyway, so the fellow who set up the clinic at Shari Tzedek was an English guy. I'm thinking to remember I've told you this story, but maybe not. Anyway, so one day there was a group of Rabbonim who were going round being shown the clinic, being shown all the stuff. I've been zoicha to do this myself. And it's tremendous, particularly Rabbonim, who are going to be dealing with people like that. Now, there are some Rabbonim who specialize in medical stuff. They have no medical training, they just decide this is going to be their life. And they very often know more in certainly be able to tell you the best clinic, the best doctor, the best regimen, I think the word is, you should be having for this condition, that condition, the other condition. Which is a wonderful resource that, you're in trouble and you've got a sick kid or something like that. Where do you go when you're panicking? We're all sort of like a mess and you don't waste time. Now you can phone up this guy and say, oh, as my wife did a couple of years ago when she fell outside, he broke a shoulder. Well, the best guy in the world is blah, blah, blah. And then you go, and you don't waste time. So there's 8 Rabbonim who specialize in this medical stuff, and we're visiting the lab where my daughter-in-law works. Now, funnily and ironically enough, before my daughter-in-law worked there, my sister-in-law worked there. She was a shemeris, because you've got to make sure that the 2 components that are going to generate in your life are right and they're supervised and stuff like that. I don't think she's really a shemeris in the frum sense of the word, but she was. Anyway, so the doctor in charge of the lab, he was answering a question that one of the people asked, one of the rabbis asked, and when she heard the fellow asking, it struck her that from his accent, even though he was speaking in Hebrew, that he was an American. So this doctor turned around and he said, actually, Mrs. Sher, that's my sister-in-law, this is her area of expertise. She'll answer the question for you. Like you, she's English. So the fellow's actually English, not American. And of course, my sister-in-law is Scottish, but never mind. Right, she wasn't in Borough Park today. Anyway, soft girl soft. She explained and turned to him and explained exactly whatever the answer was. And then she said, Derek Agav, as a matter of fact, my brother-in-law, me, organises a large conference in Manchester for 2,000 people every year. It's called the Encounter Conference, and he wanted me to come and lecture on the subject. And this fellow said, and who's your brother-in-law? And she said, Y.Y. Rubenstein. And he went, Y.Y. Rubenstein? And she said, yes. Rabbi Y.Y. Rubenstein? And she said, yes. The Rabbi Y.Y. Rubenstein? She said, yes. And he turned to the other Rabbonim, and in Hebrew, he said, I am everything I am today because of Rabbi Y.Y. Rubenstein. Do you know who this rabbi is?
No.
Nor do I. Haven't a clue. But he used to apparently belong to an organization which is the English equivalent of NCSY. And I used to be very, very involved in this organization called Jewish Study Groups, JYSG. And I gave up 2 weeks from my summer vacation and my winter vacation to be with these kids. I just loved these kids. Many became very close to me and my late wife. Many became seriously from many are Rabbonim and Rebbetzins. Maybe some will be watching this as this goes out on the YouTube channel. However, this fellow, I don't know who he was, but he was listening. I must have said something, nothing of mine. I'll say over things that get me excited, the Chos Chaim or the Ord Sofin, we're going to quote in a second. Things that really get me very excited, and he was listening, and that was enough. And I'm going to go upstairs one day, and they're going to say, why did you get in? I did this, and I spoke at JYSG. No. What about Rabbi Pliny, whoever he's called? Who? he's only a rabbi because of you. Who's he? It's always going to, I'm convinced it's going to be the things that you don't know about. So here he says, then take somebody, if you could bring other people, the Gemara involved Messiah I was quoting before, turns around and says that it's impossible for that guy to be in Shemayim, as he's certainly going to be. This guy saves lives. It's impossible for him to get to Shemayim and me to be in Gehenna. It'd be impossible to be in Gehenna. Because why is he in Shemayim? Only because of you, even though I don't know about this, as I clearly don't. But if he's there and I've played some sort of part, then how can I be in Gehenna if he's in it doesn't make any sense. So if you can bring people back, that's a huge, huge responsibility. With me? And here I'm not talking about, the standard Kibbutz Chalkim type thing, which obviously is a big thing in its own right. I'm saying if there's a Jew who is in trouble and is going off the derech, and it doesn't have to be going off the derech, he's not wearing tefillin anymore. There's many ways to go off the derech. So in Chizuk Hadash, incidentally, the small Sorim of the Chofetz Chaim is four volumes of the Chofetz Chaim, the smallest Sorim. His love for Klal Yisrael is absolutely astonishing, and it keeps coming up. So here in Chizuk Hadash is a sefer about your responsibility to bring people back if you can, and he says the following thing: Hina Yedu Sheba'isket Shekol Tzatara Me'ez Hashem Lo Al Atzmanu B'Lvad Kibul. Everybody knows when we stood there at Mount Sinai and we all said yes, Nasiv and Ishmael, we all take it as Nasiv and Ishmael. Even though Hashem spoke to us in the singular, Anachi Hashem Elokech, Yodi Yonah, David, etc. Moshe, every one of us by name. But it was not, he spoke to us individually, but we answer collectively. Because there was going to be a collective responsibility in this Kabbalah Torah. So he says, that meant that we were taking on the responsibility not just to keep the Torah for ourselves, but also to make sure that other people would keep the Torah as well. That meant that we were all a raven. What's the English word for a raven? Co-signers, something like that. As the Pasuk says, the hidden things for Hashem, but the open things, that's us and Benenu and the rest of Klal Yisrael, etc. Is called that meant that we were co-signers, we were, that's a nice phrase, jointly responsible. It's another phrase that I was going around my mind, can't think of it. So that's why, says the Chofetz Chaim here, that each one of us, I can be moitzi you, you can be moitzi me for kiyum mitzvahs. So if I've made kiddush on Shabbos afternoon, and you're my Shabbos guest, and you come here, and I say, have you made kiddush? And say, I'll get you the wine to know if you make kiddush for me. Then I, who have made kiddush, still can make kiddush for you, because if there's another Jew who hasn't made kiddush, there's a bit of me that's not made kiddush. Oh, you made kiddush? Yeah, you made kiddush for yourself. But he's a bit of you, and you're a bit of me, and you're a bit of me. So therefore, there's a bit that's missing. After Yosef Kvarki going to Kiddush, the kids of Shofar, and that applies to Kiddush, and it applies to kids Shofar. So Rabbanim are always going around to old age homes and stuff like that to help people who've not heard Kiddush from the Kedama. Kamash a Rosh, and the Rosh says in the Gemara Brachos Daf Kov, Dim Yichosel Lechivra Eza Mitzvahs Ke'ilah Chosel Lai. If enemy is missing a mitzvah, then you're missing a mitzvah. So if you can reach out and touch other people, that is an enormous thing. And the Chofetz Chaim, I was saying Shirim and I was speaking last night in Brooklyn, along with the Rosh Hashiva of Mir. And here is another sefer of the Chofetz Chaim, the Kuti Amorim. And again, it's on the responsibility that a person has to other people. And then in Chelik Gimel, is talking about Be'inyan HaChocha, stopping people doing wrong things. And he says here, B'Zachrani. And I remember, says the Chofetz Chaim, it's very unusual for the Chofetz Chaim to talk about himself. He doesn't generally do that. But Zachrani, but Yosef B'Shnas Sofreish Mem Gimel. So I know he's good at math. I can work that out. In the year of Sofreish Mem Gimel. I'm hopeless at this.
140 to 37 years ago.
Okay, so what's that?
What's that?
That takes us back to what, 18 something or other? 1890s, okay. Barakov. So funnily enough, I was speaking in Brooklyn last night, and I was introducing my Chabrusa. My Rov was the Gateshead Rov, Rabbi Rabatzal Rakov. He's a Katzadi Kodesh Baruch who honestly was a father to me. And his son, Naftali, lives in Bensonhurst. And we're very good friends. and we were of the same vintage. So he asked me to come and introduce him because they were giving him some sort of award from the yeshiva that he teaches in, so his name was Rakov. I didn't realize when I first saw this that Rakov was a place in Russia, town in Russia. Anyway, so we're now Chavrusas. I'm so thrilled to be a Chavrusa of my Rav son, anyway, old friend. But it's going to be Yosef B'Shan Sof Reish Mem Gimel, but Rakov, in the city of Rakov, where Isi Be'inai, and I saw with my own eyes, Maisa Shaykh Le'inina, something that's a story that's Shaykh Le'inina. But it's Kaper, the Kfar Echod Somach Le'ir, and in a little village next to the city of Rakov, the major city of Rakov, there was a rich guy, and he did stuff, schmuggling, the white collar crime that unfortunately Jewish people seem to, Jewish people sometimes slip into and make mistakes over. And I can't resist telling this because he told this story. It's an incredible story. Sorry, nothing to do with it, but just an incredible story. He's visiting a guy who's in a maximum security prison somewhere in New York. And there's 1,000 people there, all convicted murderers. He's not a convicted murderer. He's in this prison because he skipped bail in the FBI. That's the ultimate punishment. They put him in this hell. They've already tried to kill him once. Anyway, so it was a white collar crime, but he skipped bail, so this is very cruel. Anyway, so he davens in his what's that fellow, the Lubavitch guy who was in prison? Rabashkin famously said I wasn't in prison the whole time. He was, he didn't feel he was in prison. He was too busy. He was liberated by the fact he was a From Yid. He was learning Torah. So this guy is in his prayer. He normally daven mincha in his cell, but he happened to coordinate in the last year. He's been there a year. He had to go into the yard. The yard is a very dangerous place. And apparently there are 12 telephones, and they're grouped into 3 telephones each. So there's 4 groups, and they're controlled by the gangs in the prison. Anyway, so there he was, and he's got a damn mincha, so he finds a wall, and he's davening, I would imagine, with great kavana, maybe with shocking. Anyway, so he was aware that he was surrounded. You become aware that there was by a whole bunch of people. So he took 3 steps back, 3 steps forwards, and he turned around, and it was the Muslim gang. And they said to him, anybody who prays to God in this place is protected. We'll guarantee nobody touches you. Because there isn't, a frum Orthodox gang in that prison. CC is made of steel. No, that's not how it's going to work. So he's been protected. It's an incredible story, but I tell you that. Anyway, to cut a long story short, was this fellow who did some white collar crime. He was put in trial, says the Chofetz Chaim, and he was sent to Siberia. Shnam shahaya shaloch l'Sibir. And when they took him from prison, they were taking him through Rakov, so some sort of wagon, they were taking him to Minsk, which I suppose from there he's going to Siberia. Bikish Meshadrim, he asked from the police, Shaveluhu Shikro Loy Esarav the Rakov Kushabo Etzloy Rav. On the way that they were going, they were passing the house of the rabbi of Rakov. And could I speak to the rabbi before I go into 20 years, whatever it is, the exile people to the living hell of Siberia. You know how cold it gets in Siberia. If you open the front door and throw out a bucket of water, it literally turns to ice before it hits the ground. When you speak, I think it's called the angel's kiss or the angel's something. The water vapor in your breath immediately crystallizes when it gets into the air and makes little clinky noises. So he comes and he knocks on the door, and there's the Rosh standing there. He says, "I'm a Rebbe. Yeshli terumas al kaved. I've got big taina against you. Shaloh hachicha oisim onim. You never told me off. You never criticized. You never intervened. 100% I'm guilty, and I did the stuff, whatever the stuff he did. But there was not one word from you. You could have stopped me. Ultimately, I'm going to Siberia because you didn't intervene." Wow. Well, there's all sorts of Siberias, and there's ones in heaven as well. And if you get there and you could have stopped, you could have made a Kiddush Hashem, you could have stopped a Jew doing something wrong was going to end up with them in Siberia, and you didn't, boy, oh boy, are you going to be in trouble. Okay. Shame. Let's stick with the Chofetz Chaim. Now I have to tell you, the reason that I didn't get the shir prepared properly is because I wanted to quote the next bit of the Chofetz Chaim, which is one of my favourite bits of the Chofetz Chaim, which, now it used to be when I was young, this book here, the Chofetz Chaim, Al Torah. I hold it to the camera, 1 volume. But now it's much fatter, and it's 3 volumes. This is one of the 3 volumes. So I wanted to get the quote, which comes next, which is extremely important. Couldn't find it. I spent about 40 minutes looking and going crazy to find this. It turns out this particular volume, I don't mind that they've added 2. I mean, it's fantastic. They've gone through all the Sorim to find the references to the Chumash to bring the Chofetz Chaim Torah to make it into 3 volumes. But they've taken stuff away, and I just can't figure this out. So I spent 40 or so minutes going absolutely berserk for this, trying to prepare this shir and getting absolutely nowhere fast. Anyway, so I phoned up the rabbi, or rather the rabbi's wife, and Baruch Hashem, he had the old-fashioned one. We have an old-fashioned rabbi, which is very good. Sorry?
I have the old one.
Oh yeah, I'm going to have to go get the old one because I just know what else they've taken out. So here, this is what he says. This is, incidentally, of course, is almost a parallel pasuk in Devorim and Kof Beis. But here, this is, for those taking notes, this is Kof Gimel Dalet. If you find if you come across the shore of your enemy, or Chamoroi, or his Chamor, and it's lost, then you've got to return it to him. In Parshas Kiteitzei, that's the Devarim Kof Beis Aleph, it says, if you see his sheep, his lamb actually, or his shar, which is lost, you do not turn a blind eye, you don't ignore the situation, you intervene. Because the Ramban says there, so there in Devarim, we just read it, it says Nedochim, confused or lost. Nedochim, more nevuchim, that sort of stuff, you're confused. That means, Nedochim apparently means that it's easy to bring them back. Right? It's not a lot of effort. But by adding the word Nedochim, not as I said, the opposite, Nedochim means it's very far away. Nidcha. But Hiska says Shehu Ma'akaban, it's going to get lost. And it says the Chofetz Chaim. It's here. It's very easy to understand. Im Chosa Torah Kol Kach Al Mamona Shel Yisrael. If the Torah goes to such a degree to emphasize your responsibility on the possessions, the material possessions, the money of a Jew, Afila in Chamora Aseh, and we're talking about even his donkey or his lamb. You've got to take it back and get it back to the guy. And how much more rachamim do you have to have in a Jewish soul? Who's got lost, even if it takes a lot of work to get the soul back, you're obliged. You do it. Rosh Hashanah Aleph. Gemara says, return to brother. Even if it gets lost 100 times, you have to take it back 100 times. It's a time in a derek. Sure. Well, you've got to bring a sheep back 100 times. How much work have you got to put into bringing a Jewish neshama back? And then he says, and in our times, so 1890s, 1920s, 1930s, where the majority of Jews were getting lost. Then he says, even if the vast majority of Jews are lost the path and are chatoim gemurim, don't be angry with them. Rag toim b'derech, they're lost on the way, just like little lamb, little sheep. For whatever reasons that happened, maybe they were orphaned, impoverished, Right time b'derech ha'idei is a p'sham shem time also min ha'derech harihem mamish kaseh oibet she'en yodei ein lachshan ha'beis. But that's just like a little lamb. It doesn't know how to come back. They don't even know they should come back. What an incredibly important mitzvah is to bring them back on the right path. You will let them know the way they should go. Listen. And there are certain people of Mibali HaTorah. Asher Nosa Hashem Bahem, Hashem has given them Chochmah B'Tavuna Ra'im L'Chach B'Shem Yisrael. Hashem has given them the ability. And again, we're not talking about the classic Kirach Hakim of our time. We're talking about any Jew who's getting lost and stumbling. And Hashem has given you, perhaps, the ability to bring them back again. It's again something the Chofetz Chaim, when he talks in the Sefer I quoted before, he says that if you've got the ability to speak and inspire people, then if you don't boy, you're in trouble. And if you could, you say, but you know what? As Rashi says, inside Be'ira, they don't take me seriously in my city because I grew up. They remember I was the kid who kicked the football through the window. You're not going to take me seriously. They said, I have to go to the next city. Right? So move to Baltimore. Move to Chicago. Move to somewhere they're going to see you as a kosher rabbi, not as a little kid who they remember with the shorts and all that, the short pants and stuff. There are some people who've been given a certain koich from Hashem Yisborach, and they have the ability to heal the wounds of our people. And they deserve, he says, a special title, shepherds of Israel. They can bring these little lambs, these little lost lambs back. The way that's going to get them back to Hashem. Don't you sit down and do nothing at such a time. The little sheep, the lamb, the further they wander away, the harder or impossible it is for them to come back. And you will not be just in trouble for the fact that you did things wrong, but what about that Jew that you could have saved? I'll tell you a story. Many years ago in London, I was invited to the JLE to give a share on the obligation of reaching out to Kirach Hakim, it was actually. That can apply to everything. And so I gave this share, and it was also some Ma'amorei Chazal, Chofetz Chaim, etc., the serious obligation that we've just been talking about. And when it came to question time, a fellow stood up at the front, and he was called Dr. Sifman. He was the head moil of England. Originally said Tiftikin, and he was actually my moil. So Dr. Sifman said, Rabba Rubenstein, Rabba, R-A-B-B-A, in South Africa. Rabba Rubenstein, I totally agree with everything you said, but before I ask my question, do you mind if I tell you a story? And of course I never mind stories, because that's basically the currency of my job. So he told me a story that after the USSR collapsed, then the doors, which had been firmly closed, were suddenly thrown open, and Jews could go and bring to these little lost sheep all sorts of things that they'd not been able to get beforehand, tefillin, and of course bris milah. So many moilim that I knew, because I was live at the time, many moilim I knew, and friends of mine went, rushed to Russia to do milah. And they were working sometime. Now, the milah in an adult is not the milah of a baby. The milah of a baby is 10 minutes. The milah of a full-grown adult, at least an hour. So many hours are than they were doing 14 milahs a day. 14 hours, that's a lot of work. Right? So there's the milah, there's the severing of the skin and all that stuff. But in an adult, there's also bleeding points that have to be sewn off and stuff like that. Anyway, so basically, he said there were lines of people, old people, desperate to have a bris milah, and at the end of the day they were exhausted, and I would say to them, we can't do any more, we're exhausted, and we've got no anaesthetic. Without anaesthetic! They wanted a bris milah without anaesthetic. He said when he was there, he met an old fellow who had a long white beard, which he had worn. Do you know the Soviets had a campaign against beards? Campaign against this, because they had all this sort of ridiculous pseudoscience they used to try and prove the fact that they were right. For example, the fact that there is some.
Lenin had a beard.
Sorry.
Lenin had a beard.
Well, goatee. and he was dead.
That's why.
Serves him right, yeah. That's right. And apparently beards were full of disease, and they got you disease and stuff like that. Okay. It's an astonishingly interesting thing. When the theory, Darwin came up with the theory of evolution, he was aware that there was an enormous flaw in his theory, which was, if that was correct, then you should be able to find in the record of the strata of the soil or the strata of the earth, where you find all these fossils, the process which he predicted, which is, fish with suddenly tiny little buds which are growing, grow into legs, and in the next strata, a couple of million years later, they're longer legs, and then somehow they managed to be jointed legs, and then they grew feet, and they sort of like walked out. You've seen the stupid pictures, sort of like walking until it became sort of like. Then they make a joke out of that. Scottish people like to put, man with a kiln. So if that was true, then all you need to do is to look in the paleontological record, and you'll find the exact same, or the exact predicted progression and evolution of these various, incrementally, stage after stage, of these animals. But you do not find that. And Darwin was aware of this. What you find is huge change from animals with no wings to animals with wings. Just, no in-between stages. Soviet scientists used this as proof that communism was correct and a natural form of governance of human beings. Because if you look in the paleontological record, you'll find that change in the planet evolves revolutionary. Huge jumps between one and the other. And therefore, as communism is a revolutionary doctrine, and naturally it is, totally ignoring the fact that therefore, without those in-between stages, then the whole thing falls to bits. You get no raya whatsoever, you get no proof whatsoever. Why did I tell you that? Oh, back to this. So basically, he was visiting and doing meals, and this fellow with a white beard said, I told him the following story. His father was a Malamed, and he'd worn this beard all the way through the Soviet era to put yourself in danger, of course. It's like wearing a flag, I'm anti-Soviet. You could go to Siberia for having a beard. Anyway, so to cut a long story short, the father, who'd been a Malamed his entire lifetime, used to travel every year, this time of year, before Rosh Hashanah. He would go to Radin to get a bracha from the Chofetz Chaim. And he was a very old man, but of course the Chofetz Chaim was an even older man. And one year he went to get a bracha from the Chofetz Chaim, and the Chofetz Chaim, the message came back from the Shamas, whoever it was dealing with the Chofetz Chaim, or his wife, or I'm not sure, the Chofetz Chaim can't see you. He's not able to see you, whatever the Lashon was, and he understood that the Chofetz Chaim, being an old man, he wasn't well, so he got for us, which is very disappointing. In Russia you're traveling, 4, 5, 6 days to get to. I just discovered this week that in the Chernobyl disaster, the exclusion zone, the area of Ukraine which has been affected by the nuclear disaster, do you know how big it is? 2,600 square kilometers. Oh gosh, I don't know why I came across this fact. This is unbelievable. Russia's a big place, so maybe try to take a whole week in a cart and trains and sacrifice to get there. It's very disappointing. Like, you can buy the next year. And again, the message came back: the Chofetz Chaim won't see you. At this point, he intuited that there wasn't a fact of can't see you, but won't see you. So he came out eventually, and the fellows waiting for him. He said, "Rebbe, I don't understand. I've come to you every year for 50 years, something like that. For a brocha, you always give me a brocha. Last year, you gave me a brocha. What have I done wrong?" So the Chofetz Chaim, don't forget, the Chofetz Chaim was a Kohen, and the Gemara says Kohanim have tempers. And the Chofetz Chaim himself was quite open about the fact that he had a temper. He had to work on his temper. So I said to him, "Do you have a Talmud called Lebeler Bronstein?" "Yes." "Tell me about your Talmud Lebeler Bronstein." So he was brilliant. He was an Eloi. And I taught him every week, or taught him every night, if I saw whatever it was. And then his father died, and he became orphaned, and I taught him for 2 weeks for free, and then I had to take a new Talmud because we needed money, and there was no money. Now this fellow telling the story to Dr. Seifman said, "I want you to know how poor the family was. His mother used to go and buy a herring. My late wife Zeta he was one of the richest Bochum in Slobodka. He could afford a whole herring for himself for Shabbos. He used to cut this herring into slices and go around the doors selling slices of herring and making a kopeck, a penny profit. Then she'd buy another herring and keep it until she could have enough to get challahs for Shabbos. That's how poor they were. We're talking starving poor. So when he said that they had to give up in order to get the to take a new Talmud to get them the food that they needed, that was how poor they were. And the Chofetz said, "Do you know what your Talmud label of Ornstein is called today? Leon Trotsky." And he refused to give him a bracha. Wow. But if you remember, so it sounds very harsh. It does sound very harsh even now when I say it. But we just what the Chofetz said here. If you could save an neshama, which is also a Chillul HaShem, which you'd be saving yourself, and you didn't do it, boy, oh boy, you're in trouble. Look at Labour Bronstein. So a nice, fast way to make if you're worried at all, Chas v'Shalom, for anything you've done wrong in the past, and Chillul HaShem, who of us is not going to worry about Chillul HaShem, then the best way is Kiddush Hashem. There's lots of ways of making a Kiddush Hashem, but basically if you can reverse the damage that you've done.
How do you ever reverse that damage?
Sorry? Well, each case is unique.
Trotsky.
So what did you do it? Trotsky?
Yeah.
In that particular case,
Yeah.
right? So Trotsky's is dead. So he goes to wherever it was in South America.
Okay, but his effect, creating the USSR.
Oh yes, so no doubt
was
at all that
that-
Trotsky created the USSR.
What's that?
There's no doubt at all that Trotsky created the USSR.
Right. So this Bronstein,
Right.
for rejecting him as a Talmud,
Well,
how
no.
does he ever make a Kiddush Hashem great enough to undo the damage?
If one life, in one life that you in inverted commas, because I mean, what would you and I do? I mean, if I had no food for my kids, But in rejecting one child, look at the negative damage. What made Makar one child? Oh, so he didn't make a world revolution. How do you know what is the cheshbon in Shemayim about bringing one child in? That can be huge, or 2 children, or 10 children. At least from your point of view, if you're showing Hashem that you're trying your best, that you can't undo Trotsky, I suppose, but you can undo the process or reverse the process that produced a Trotsky. Look, the Chofetz Chaim famously says, you speak Lashon Hara, it's a little bit like throwing, taking up a sheet of paper, cutting it into tiny pieces, tearing it into tiny pieces, and a windy day, going to the town square, throwing it into the air, and then somebody says, put it back together again. Which of course is impossible. So therefore, what can you do? How can you ever do tshuva for that? Well, the answer is that you try and do things that undo the damage that maybe that created. A little bit of the damage, like your case, is not just from one person. So I hurt you, and then I can undo it. I owe you the money, I stole your money, I'll pay you back the money. I hurt you in public, I stand up and apologize in public, that sort of thing. That you can do. But what if you hurt lots and lots and lots of people? Well, the USSR did. I mean, don't forget, Stalin, by many estimates, didn't kill 12 million people in his concentrations like Hitler did, 6 million Jews and 6 million other human beings. But they say, I've heard the figure 50 million. Huge, breathtaking. Now, of course, don't be unfair to Hitler here. I mean, Stalin had more time. But I'm sure Hitler would have achieved equal numbers, or excelled, or exceeded them. However, if you've done a lot of damage to a lot of people, you can't go and get those little bits of paper and put them back together again, but you can do a lot of good for a lot of people. Take a silly example. I heard somebody say, well, it's not a silly example, but somebody said, we've got friends who were brought up in Borough Park, and they remember the building of the Verrazano Bridge, which you're probably very interested to watch, but it's a major, etc. So somebody said at the time, the Verrazano Bridge was there in order to speed. In Shemayim, what was the cheshbon? Name the major cities in the world. So Paris and London and Rome and Washington D.C. and Moscow and stuff like that. Yeah, that's the world's perspective. From a Torah perspective, name the major cities in the world. Lakewood and Borough Park and Gateshead and Bnei Brak is a totally different cheshbon. So somebody said that the real reason that the Verrazano Bridge was there so that people, from Lakewood could get to Brooklyn more easily and vice versa. But suppose you've done a lot of damage to a lot of people. And why not do a lot of good for a lot of people? So you fund the Brooklyn Bridge. The guy used to sell the Brooklyn Bridge. You do some major project that helps lots and lots of Jews. I can't specifically undo the damage of that Lashon Hara, which damaged lots of people, or something that's damaged lots of people. I can certainly show Hashem and show other people as well that I really regret it by making a Kid Hashem that affects lots and lots of other people as much as I'm able to do. If I'm multi-gazillionaire, I build a bridge. I'm just Yehudi Yonah Rubinstein. I do something that I can possibly do to help lots of other people. I write a book that inspires other people, or I speak to lots of, I don't know, you as well. Everything we can do that affects that would undo the damage of a lot of people. 50 million deaths? I don't know. But don't forget the classic. The Chazal say that the absolute pinnacle of a Baal Tshuva was Menashe Melech Yisrael. Now his treatment of people and his killing of people was, quite an industrial scale, and yet he was able to do tshuva for that. So there is tshuva for even things which are dramatically horrible.
How did Nivuz Radan do tshuva?
Sorry?
Nivuz Radan.
Don't know.
He killed
God.
Probably million people.
Yeah. Well, there's a story of it was Rabbi Kiva, who was it? Was being tortured to death, and the torturer said, if I've speeded up your death, will that help? He spent whole life torturing people to death. The cheshbon's different, Shemai. One last idea, and then we'll come back to this next week. This is my favorite idea this time of year. I think it's crucially important. I'm running out of time, so I'll tell you this outside. This is the Sefer Oretzof, and it's one of my favorite Svarim. It's a mixture of Musa and Shkafa. And also see Finkel, the Alta from Slobodka, and he says an interesting thing here. He says that when Rabban Shem created the world, this is in the second heading, it's called Churban and Binyan. Churban and Binyan. When Rabban Shem created the world, he saw that it was very good, and it was, and he says, Tov Ma'id. I'll read this a little bit to you. Come on. B'yara came as Kol Asher also b'hinei Tov Ma'id Mekan Shahoya Bara Alamas Machriben Ba'at Shabara Azeh. The implication of the word Tov Ma'id, this is very good, is so if your wife makes you a meal and you say, "No, honey, that's a really good meal," and because you're a male and therefore an idiot, you think you've complimented your wife and you've built, you're building her up by that. But of course, she's a woman. She didn't hear that compliment. She heard that criticism. What was wrong with last night's meal? And the meal before that? Because the implication of something is very good is that something else wasn't very good. If you say, "No, that's a cup of coffee," then the implication is that the other coffee wasn't a cup of coffee. So Rasham says this world is very good, and the implication is that other worlds that he made were not good. Did the Rasham make other worlds? Yeah, the Medrash says quite clearly he did. From here we see quite clearly that Hashem created worlds and destroyed them until he built this one. Omer says, Dain Heinenli. We flip over to Aramaic. These ones please me, Yosin Lo Heinenli. These ones didn't please me. But that doesn't make any sense at all. The Rasham doesn't make mistakes, can't make mistakes. Even if you were to imagine in some sort of crazy moment that he could, but as he can look into the future, he'd see it was a mistake and he won't make it in the first place. What does that mean? Not only that, in saying that Rabban Shem makes mistakes, there's another issue. And that is, why tell us about this? Why tell us that Rabban Shem, so the world, Hashem made this world, this is very good, the other worlds, how many worlds did Hashem make which were no good? Failed. Any idea?
26 generations.
26 worlds? Is that your guess?
26 generations.
26 generations to we get the Torah.
No, sorry, 974.
Good, 974. 974 failed worlds, which were no good, and then he made this world which was good. That was just quite a lot of mistakes. So the question really is that A, that doesn't make any sense because you can't make mistakes, and second of all, even if we were to imagine he made a mistake, why tell us about it? There was nobody there from the previous worlds to say, guess what, I made a really rotten one. Our world was horrible. Yours much better. You see what he did before. Doesn't make any sense. So he says here, very interestingly, the reason that Rabban Shem created 974 worlds, and they failed, is because he wanted them to fail. There were 974 intentional failures. In order for you to know that the basis and the foundation, the launch of your world, is failure. You're expected to get it wrong before you get it right. You're expected to make mistakes. As long as you're learning from your mistakes, then you start to move forward. So it could be that you made the biggest mistakes in the world, that you made the biggest mistakes. So you're over an essay, were not over an essay. You didn't get time for shows, you didn't dab and stuff like that. Okay, so you really regret that. Fine, good. And you're taking steps to put it right. Or that you ate something that was wrong, or you're over some sort of lab, and I'm guessing we probably occasionally do that as well. The other ones, I don't think anybody who comes to this share would be over the other ones, Khalila. But the big and dramatic ones. But even if you do, Hashem expects us to make mistakes, and we learn from those mistakes. But one of the ways that we can put it right dramatically is reverse the process or do the opposite process. And says Moshe Sternbuch, quoting Rabbeinu Yonah, and that is that if you take people and help them in their journey and to correct themselves, then of course that corrects you at the same time you're making a Kiddush Hashem.